The broadcast is now starting, and the passive listening mode has been activated for all participants. This conference will be recorded, and the recording might be shared with others. The participants list is closed, and the chat function operates in private mode, with only the speakers and the moderators accessing the chat messages. If you prefer not to proceed under these conditions, please log out at your convenience. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to our virtual summit, Responsible Artificial Intelligence in Clinical Trials Bias Integrity. It's a pleasure to have you all here today as we explore this essential and rapidly evolving topic. I'm Tamara, the Operations Manager of Syntegrity's MyRBQM Academy, and I'll be your host for this summit. So, fantastic to see so many participants joining us worldwide. And before our conference begins, let me quickly walk you through the features of our virtual conference platform. So you can send us your questions throughout the sessions using the chat, which is located at the bottom right of your screen. Please select Send to Moderators from the drop-down menu before submitting your questions so they can reach our team directly, please. And to ensure a smooth experience, I will share a few troubleshooting tips in just a moment here in the chat. These should help resolve any audio or video issues that might come up. Okay, so that was it from my side. Now let's begin. And I would like to hand over to my colleague Linda Bunschoten, who will start with some opening remarks. Linda, please. Well, obviously, there seems to be a connection issue here with Linda. Just a moment. I'm trying to fix that. And then we can start with our conference here. So the active participant mode has been activated for my colleague Linda. And here we go.
Hello, Tamara. Can you hear me?
Fantastic, Linda. Thank you very much.
I think we have a slight load issue. We see lots of people logging in at the same time, and normally we have about 150 to 200 participants. The platform guaranteed us 500, so I hope this will work. I feel very privileged to be here today alongside my colleague Tamara Beck to open this exciting event. Like I mentioned, last year we had about 300 participants, and this year we are close to 600 participants. And they are all from around the world. And I think this incredible growth shows how important and timely the topic of AI in clinical trials has become. What makes this summit so special? Everybody volunteering, everybody contributing to this summit does it on a voluntary basis. And therefore, it's not just a typical conference, but a shared learning experience. So we are here to exchange knowledge and ideas and explore AI's growing role in clinical trials. This year, we have 18 speakers from 15 organizations. We have leading pharma and tech companies represented. We have experts from academia and consulting. So we did our best to gather a wide range of voices to provide diverse views on how AI shapes clinical trials or clinical research in general. Over the past decade, I think AI has been quietly working behind the scenes in architectural levels, in algorithms, in systems. And now the last 1-2 years, AI has moved into the application layer. And it's becoming something we see and feel in our daily work. As normal users, we can touch and work with AI. And that brings us to the concept that AI is no longer a faraway idea. It's a reality that is changing how we live and how we do our industry operations. So last year we started to talk about AI as a new development, bots, but today we see AI has evolved into agents, assistants. So we'll explore the practical uses of AI, its benefits, and how we can ensure it remains trustworthy and ethical. And someone said, and that person will also be a speaker today in our program, AI is only as unbiased as its data. But this raises a question. What happens, for example, when AI starts training itself? Could AI eventually outsmart itself? So these are the kinds of questions we'll explore together. And with that, I warmly welcome you to this year's summit. I'm excited for the conversations we'll have over the next 2 days. So this session is going to take 2.5 hours tomorrow as well. And I hope Wole has, in the meantime, gotten into the webinar.
I just received an information that he is currently not able to join. So if you don't mind, I would like to switch the sequence here a little bit and start with Ron first, please, with Ron's session here.
Is Ron here already?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we have separated the program in a couple of blocks, and the first block will be covered by 3 speakers. They will speak in the theme AI as an assistant, and I'm very happy to introduce Ron Burns to you. Welcome, Ron Burns. And Tamara will start off with a couple of sentences about yourself.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Ron Burns. I'm with a company called Biofourmis, which has been working very diligently in the AI and biomarker space for a number of years. And I also want to point out, as a smaller startup venture, us startup guys are always on time. I don't know what's going on with these big tech guys, but it is what it is. With that said, I'm excited to prepare to present to you today some of my thoughts on space.
Thank you, Ron. We'll switch to your presentation.
Thank you. Okay, and just so I'm clear, I do have control of these slides, right?
Yes, that is correct. You should be able to move to the slides yourself if you want to try it, please.
Okay. I don't see an arrow, which is why I'm asking.
Yeah, good. Just a second. I'll bring that up for you.
There we go.
Fantastic.
Can you still hear me okay?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So I'll begin with the question, where are we with AI? This is beyond the life sciences space, but just societally, where are we? And I wanted to start with a quote from Rooijen, a famous American scientist, who said many years ago, "We tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run." And I think we've seen that over multiple technology adoption curves in my life, from the internet to social media, and now I think to AI.
Ron, before we dive deeper into your topic, could you please turn on the camera? Is that possible?
Is it
Wonderful.
on?
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. So in terms of, for the purposes of this conference, it's about safety, it's about security. I thought it would make sense to maybe define these 2 items around AI a little bit more succinctly. So AI cybersecurity focuses on systems, unauthorized access, data breaches. This is the IT stuff. We're all familiar with this. We're all using dual factor authentication. Security's been a big issue for a while now, and AI cybersecurity is going to take it up a notch. And all of the security companies are on this. Fantastic to see. A challenge for sure, but a manageable challenge. A more difficult challenge for our space, I think, is AI safety. And AI safety focuses on broader considerations: human well-being, societal values, ethical implications. So why does AI safety matter? Well, in life sciences, we know that safety matters. We've been on top of safety for many, many decades. We have safety systems. We have regulatory bodies, both in Europe and in the United States, that really do a good job in terms of taking safety seriously when it comes to things like adverse events, nausea, high blood pressure, and what have you. But AI safety is a different kettle of fish altogether. That's where we see things now emerging, particularly with the more advanced models, where AI can optimize flawed objectives, drift from their original goals, and become power seeking. In fact, some AI models will resist shutdown now in advanced testing, which I find very interesting. I have a couple of Macs around here that resist shutdown, but I don't feel consciousness behind that decision on the other end of the old Macintosh. So resisting shutdown is a scary thing. And some recent AI safety experts have asserted that general AI will be capable of overthrowing governments, which is a terrifying thing to think about. And just so you don't think I'm sitting here blustering in the suburbs of Philadelphia in my room about nothing, Center for AI Safety put out a letter this year, 2024, signed by 300 notable figures, including those 4 figures on the right: Bill Gates, we know, 2 very significant figures at OpenAI, and a very significant individual at Google DeepMind. And I want to read this paragraph because it's important. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks, such as pandemics and nuclear war. Now, that's a safety issue way beyond an adverse event, right? Extinction is a pretty bad adverse event. So why is this happening? A lot of folks are like, sure, that doesn't make sense to me. Really, AI is going to take over. What's happening technically? What's happening technically is very interesting. The way AI works is the large language models or diffusion models are trained on data. And you have someone supervising that training. And for most of the history of AI development, the supervisor was a human supervisor. The AI models have become so sophisticated now that humans don't understand how they're creating things. When I say things, I mean AI is creating applications, coding applications, and human developers are saying, I don't know how that AI did that. I wouldn't have done it that way, but that's really good. So what's happened now is the weaker models have become the trainers and the supervisors of the stronger models, which creates the dynamic where AI becomes self-fulfilling and self-perpetuating, which, although amazing, and there's been a lot of science fiction movies that cover this topic, it's at hand and we need to understand it as a society. So I asked the question here, and it's a little bit hyperbolic, but bear with me. Which AI future, which version of us are we going to embrace, are we going to create for ourselves? Are we going to embrace the beautiful vision of Ray Kurzweil around the singularity? If you've never read Ray Kurzweil, I invite you to go read his books, The Coming Age of Smart Machines, followed by The Coming Age of Spiritual Machines. Ray was ahead of the AI game in the late 70s, early 80s. And his vision is that we'll eventually be able to upload our consciousness into the singularity and become eternal and live long enough to take 2-3 million light year trips on spaceships to other planets to populate them after we destroy our planet. Wonderful sci-fi moment, right? But it is nonetheless very optimistic and you know, a beautiful vision where we could go with this technology. There is another vision that's been out there also from the 80s. We could end up with this guy, which, by the way, I would point out that the flesh-covered version of this guy actually somehow became the governor of California. So let us not underestimate the potential for weird things to happen. So is it this bifurcated? Are we going to be eternal beings, or are we going to have a extinction level event with AI? It is being talked about more seriously now, and I think we have a responsibility in life sciences to understand this. So we have obligations to this discussion on multiple levels. This first bullet point, I think, is historic and important and not well understood in our industry. Technology-led industries around safety have stalled dramatically. OpenAI eliminated their safety group, and all of those people on that previous slide, founders, the CTO of OpenAI, have left the business over this issue. This is significant because clearly, in my view, and the view of most of the industry, OpenAI is ahead of the game, And there is some debate as to whether whoever gets to general artificial intelligence will win everything. There may not be multiples, there may just be one. In which case, it's dangerous to have technology companies regulate themselves. And the international drug approval bodies, in this case, could act as a model for what an AI regulatory body could be. So I think it's pretty well established at this point in our culture, in our economy, in our society. The FDA and the European drug approval agencies are well respected. Industry, which often doesn't like excess regulation, and I understand that, have found a way to work with the FDA. And I think all of us would agree it's been a relatively good thing to make sure that drugs and medical devices are safe. I think that same framework can be used and that same model can be used around a national or international AI regulatory body. And what's interesting, historically, 1,000 years from now, when they look back at the history of AI, the first regulatory efforts around AI were, in fact, the FDA's regulations around software as a medical device, or as the hip among us are now calling it, SAMDA. The FDA has already set forth some significant guidance, and there's businesses like Biofourmis, where I work, where there is work done to manage these regulatory expectations. So the first attempt in human history to regulate AI has already happened, and it's happened with our good friends at the FDA, albeit we're regulating the Cro-Magnon men of AI and machine learning at this point. Is still a significant milestone that we should consider and be proud of. And the FBI has offered significant guidance on AI and has done so in multiple centers. So they're taking this issue very seriously, which I appreciate. And again, I want to make sure that everyone listening to me now understands I'm not here representing Biofourmis exclusively. These opinions are my opinions and not the opinions of Biofourmis. But I do work for Biofourmis, which is in the business of creating digital endpoints, FDA-cleared algorithms around wearables and what have you. And it's a tremendously interesting space where algorithm development is now much more of a structured process and needs to be FDA cleared. And the regulatory lift here is heavy, but it's good. It's good. It keeps us constrained and it keeps us looking towards things that make sense. And the fact that we as a clinical community, clinical trials community for years, have accepted and embraced the notion of a regulatory roadmap that we need to get through for approvals, both for drugs, devices, and now algorithms, again, I think stands as an example of how the tech industry should be willing to be regulated in a similar way so that their AI algorithms are proved to be safe for society and not dangerous. So getting back to FDA and the FDA's guidance in this space, the FDA has provided some interesting guidance saying we want to foster collaboration in industry around AI. And so one of the things I wanted to offer today is an idea of what that might look like. What would AI collaboration look like in our space? Biofourmis is proposing, and again, I'm not here selling anything. This doesn't cost any money. This is a cooperative effort, the CRS consortium. But the notion here is that we pool our resources as industry together to start building FDA-cleared algorithms for specific things, like in this case, CRS around oncology studies. We're also doing work around scratch and sleep algorithms for atopic dermatitis, for example. But the idea is that you can really reduce the time to development around these algorithms. And these algorithms are going to remain neutral in terms of a competitive advantage from one pharmaceutical or one med device company to another. So if we can create a layer of cooperation that also is tied to a regulatory body that keeps this AI safe, but then we can also create a body of cleared AI algorithms in the AI and machine learning space, then instead of some one of these algorithms taking 3, 4, 5 years to get approved, we can reduce that approval time to a year, year and a half, 2 years, benefiting human health, benefiting the entire clinical trial space, and improving human health. So with that said, what is the CRS consortium's value proposition? Let me just lay this out very specifically. So as I mentioned, quicker time to ROI through pooling of resources and in particular pooling of anonymized data to generate accelerated algorithm development. More efficient spend of investment through sharing the risk involved with digital tool development. Opportunity to contribute clinical insight, weigh in on study design, and help define biomarker criteria. Regulatory adoption driven by aligned cross-industry collaboration. This is important because I think there are unknown potholes to come. And if we go into this as an industry and we work on these problems together, I think we'll hit the spirit of that FDA guidance to collaborate as an industry on this problem. And lastly, initial access to complete solution with disease-specific care pathways, research protocol templates, and clinical workflows. So again, what's interesting from my perspective, having been in the clinical space for a while now, we've created a really good synergy with regulatory bodies to do our work and improve human health, to keep drugs and medical devices safe. I think the whole AI technology industry can look at what we're doing and have a model on how AI algorithms can be regulated in a positive way that isn't the heavy hand of regulation that some politicians would think would be too heavy, but also mitigates the risk of a technology that has huge potential downsides. So with that said, and being aware of time, if you are interested at all in learning more about the CRS consortium, or for that matter, the extraction, sleep, and atopic dermatitis algorithm that we're working on, these are collaborative efforts. Love to hear from you. ron.burns@biofourmis.com. And with that, I'm not sure I understand the format entirely, Linda. Are we supposed to pause here for questions, or is that at another time?
Yes, Ron, that would be great for our audience here if we can answer some questions. And ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to ask Ron a question, then just send it to me in the chat window and make sure to select Send to Moderators before you send your message, please. And Ron, I will have a look here in the chat and see when a question comes in, then I'll let you know.
I hope you're going to read it to me out loud, because I do not have my new AI eyes to read the tiny type on this.
Of course, no problem at all. So there is no specific question on your topic yet. Ladies and gentlemen,
I see, is there a presentation that will be shared?
yes, I will answer that later in the chat. And yes, the presentation, by the way, I can already answer it now, of course, will be shared with everybody who is in the summit here for longer than 1 hour. And we are going to send everyone then the link by email to watch the video here and also the presentations.
We have a good question. I see it with my human eyes. Is there any reason why the AI safety efforts have been stalled? Is it okay if I grab that one, Linda?
Of course, please go ahead.
To answer that in a non-controversial way, let's talk for a second about the founding documents around OpenAI. So OpenAI, when it was founded, in its founding charter, agreed to set aside 20% of all capital raised for safety efforts. In our world, in clinical software, it's a big word for testing. But testing in the AI context is very important because it can prevent things like AI doing bad things. So with recent funding rounds reaching numbers like $100 billion, 20% of $100 billion turns out to be $20 billion. And even in the life sciences space, we can round that number into being a big number in our mind. And the competitive landscape is so rife to get to the finish line here on the next large language models and diffusion models, that I think the decision's been made to, instead of spending that money on safety, to spend it on advanced development and speed to market. I understand that as a business decision, but if you look into this a little, dig into it a little bit more deeply, you'll see a significant number of very senior executives at OpenAI resigned over this. And I don't think this is something we should take lightly. I am not of the belief that Google or Microsoft or OpenAI or Apple can self-regulate in this area any more than a life sciences company could be expected to say, this drug's perfectly safe, trust us, we figured it out, take it. There's got to be some checks and balances in our culture that say, when something is dangerous, we have a mechanism to manage it, to understand it, to build it. Doesn't mean we don't build it on the potential, but it does mean as a society, we have an obligation to look at what's happening. And I think being in the life sciences space, we have respectfully and cooperatively worked with regulatory bodies for many decades. We are a model for what AI regulation needs to look like going forward. I'll also add, I think, on an individual basis, we have a responsibility to argue for the benefits of AI in society. For example, let's say you're on your way back from a trade show or meeting up with a customer, you're at a bar at an airport, and someone sits down next to you and goes, man, this AI stuff is terrible, all these fake videos, fake news, it's awful. You could fall down that rabbit hole, but we in the life sciences community have to be the people that stand up and say, but we're figuring out a way to use it for human health. We're figuring out a way to bring oncology and cancer drugs to market faster. We're extending human life with it. It's not all bad. And if that's what we believe and that's what we want to evangelize for in society, we need to find a structural mechanism to allow it to happen.
Good. Thank you very, very much, Ron, for answering the questions. Thank you also very much for doing this presentation here. So I see that we now have Wole finally here in our system. Just a moment, please. And before we can switch to his presentation, which is around AI assistance, responsible, reliable, and innovative. So Wole is the Chief AI Officer, Microsoft Federal Civilian. And Wole drives AI strategies at Microsoft, helping US government agencies modernize operations and enhance service delivery for citizens. I hope the connection is working out good now so that we can continue with Wole, please.
Perhaps, Tamara, it's better not to switch on the video in this case.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
Wole.
Okay, I'm trying to.
And now we lost Wole again.
Okay, I'm very sorry for this inconvenience here, and I'm going to set the scene here now for Dr. Lakkavalli, who is the next speaker. Just a moment, please. And by the way, Dr. Lakkavalli leads the clinical data management at Fortrea, ensuring efficient and effective clinical trial processes across global operations. Dr. Lakkavalli Amrith is the principal global CDM operations at Fortrea. So, and the activation is going on. Just a moment until we continue. And here we go. Welcome, Dr. Lakkavalli. Hello. Thank you very much for joining. Hi there.
Thank you so much. Am I audible? Is my
wonderful
audio clear? And
yes, okay. Thank you. Thanks for checking.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Linda. Amazingly grateful and humbled to be a part of this great summit. AI as an assistant. We have a lot of things to discuss and very little time, I would say that. So let's jump into the next slide. And thank you so much, Ron, for bringing in about the software as a medical device. I was not thinking of going in much detail about the SAMD or software as a medical device, but amazing presentation. Thank you for bringing all those insights so that I can add up to it. And before I proceed, I just want to have a word of disclaimer. I'm not representing Fortrea today. This opportunity is to share knowledge, share and learn from the presentations and all the amazing people who are there in the industry. So let's, without any further ado, let's jump into the next slide. Yeah, I have the control. So a pretty unconventional way of presenting today. And Ron, I appreciate the workflows, what you presented during your first presentation. I am a firm believer that when the presentations are made, the participants are either reading your slides or listening to you. So what I want people in this amazing AI Summit is your attention. The next 10 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds, I want all of you to imagine a scenario which I would like to bring forth, because this scenario is very important, setting the premise and setting the stage for the next few slides. We're talking about a very important topic today. I've been seeing a lot of comments about how artificial intelligence has been influencing all of our lives. At the same time, there are people who are not so have not so good views about artificial intelligence. So here is the scenario. Here is it. Here how it goes. You get up in the morning. It's a wonderful day. You go to your college or you go to your work. You have a wonderful work day. You come back home. You're watching TV, spending very good time with your family and friends, and suddenly a very unexpected thing happens to you. You encounter an unimaginable, unbearable pain in your back, and you fall off the ground. Not sure what's going on. You call 911. The ambulance arrives, and the next moment before you realize you're in the emergency. This, my friends, I just want to bring back to the presentation. This particular scenario is not a scenario. It happened to me. It's a story which happened to me back in mid 2017 when I was diagnosed with a condition called Cauda-Equina syndrome. For much of you who don't know what this condition is, this is a condition, Cauda, to just simplify things. Cauda means tail, equina means horse. So we all know that the brain has the continuation of the spinal cord. The spinal cord is divided under various segments: cervical for the neck, thoracic for the chest, lumbar for the level below the thorax. So your spinal cord ends at the level L1 or the lumbar L1, the spine, and then it branches out like the tail of the horse. That's why it's called Cauda-Equina. And there are certain conditions where this particular nerve gets pinched or pressurized. And when that happens, the person who is experiencing this condition experiences an unbearable, unimaginable pain in his back, leading all to his legs. And what could happen is, it is a catastrophic emergency, surgical emergency. If it's not treated immediately, the person can lose sensation in his bladders, his bowels, and all the sexual organs down below his belly. So this, my friend, I wouldn't have been here talking to you in front of you if I was not given surgery and immediate attention when I was there in the hospital. And the reason why I'm stating this is because all the healthcare providers, including the physicians in the ER today, not only in Canada, but throughout the world, are facing an unimaginable amount of pressure in terms of their workloads, in terms of the ratios between physicians and the patients, in terms of the funds that is taking care of running these hospitals, and especially about in this scenario in Canada, where the public health is covered by OHIP. Yeah, that stands for Ontario Health Insurance Plan. The province where I am posted has a tremendous amount of pressure running these ERs in the hospitals. The ERs, we have seen back when the COVID hit us in 2019, 2020, early 2020, so many ERs were closed. They couldn't take up the load. They simply collapsed. The system collapsed. And the reason, again, I'm stressing the reason here we are trying to address is, how can AI bridge this gap? How can AI bring this efficiency and solve this problem? We're going to look into these numbers, but this is why I wanted you to imagine this catastrophic scenario. If the care was not provided to me on time, then my life would have changed. I wouldn't have been here. So moving on to the next slide, just a very brief thing about me. I'm Dr. Lakkavalli Amrith. I'm a maxillofacial surgeon trained dentist, but very early on, I made a decision to move into clinical research so that I can help more people, more healthcare community as such. So as I mentioned, I'm not representing Fortrea, which is one of the biggest global contract research organizations. I'm here today to share my thoughts, to share my views about artificial intelligence, some use cases we're going to discuss, and how artificial intelligence can bring about changes in the industry. So let me take a step back here and talk about this amazing general purpose technology. As we all know, artificial intelligence as such is considered as a general purpose technology. To simplify things further, if you go back, if you look at the history of human evolution, we saw in the later part of 18th century when the humanity discovered steam, the power of steam, which changed how humans transported goods. The locomotives, the steam engines changed how humans moved from one place to the other. People started moving from one city to the other, one country to the other. Great railroads were built. Amazing things happened because of steam locomotives. It changed so many industries. Then towards the early part of the 19th century, when we saw electricity, it brought about changes, it brought about industrial revolution, and it created history. Lot of industries were created, lot of sectors, lot of domains were created, which saw human evolution evolve. And the next big thing, what we saw after electricity in the early 1980s, was the introduction of computers, the power of compute. So back in those days, during 1960s, there was a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, a lot of things about how machines can influence humans, but there was no compute power. There was no enough data for us to see that change, tangible changes. But what happened after the 1980s, the early 2000s, is the power of internet, the next general purpose technology what humankind face or is still exploring. We are seeing Web3, which is a big thing in internet. And my friends, I take a pause here. In the last 2 years, what humanity has encountered or utilizing artificial intelligence has been phenomenal. The adoption rate of this artificial intelligence has been immense. You will not believe that it has surpassed the adoption rate of the computers and the internet by leaps and bounds. So the last 2 years, we have seen when ChatGPT came into picture in the early part of 2021, 2022, the adoption rate was very, very less, but it grew exponentially. Today, we use ChatGPT, we use Copilot, and I hope my friend from Microsoft will be talking about Copilot on the efficiency it's bringing up in our daily lives. But here, my friend, what I'm here to discuss in the next few slides is addressing the problem. What is the problem we have at our hand? As I mentioned, the scenario, going back to my scenario, there is an immense need for the burnout the physicians are facing, not only the physicians, but also the healthcare professionals as such, who are facing many cognitive burnout in their daily lives, and how we can address. So when we think about any solution and address these problem, the first thing we need to understand is the approach. Many companies, as Ron was mentioning in his presentation, billions and billions dollars of money is spent in the AI industry, training the models, bringing these models into general public. They can access it on their phone. But how far does it go to address the real world use cases? And that's part of the problem we are addressing. And to do this, one needs to first fall in love with the problem before you're thinking about designing an app, training your models, deciding your model. First, you have to understand the basic question: what is the solution that you're going to answer? If you have that premise in your mind, and you have a data strategy how to approach it, then your solution would definitely make a sense. So talking about the solution, what can we think of AI? Let's talk about few use cases in the scenario in terms of solution. How can AI as such in the whole healthcare as a provider, healthcare provider, and in clinical trials address these issues. So I would like to mention 3 important points here. The point about documentation, because we know that in clinical trials, unless it's documented, it's not done. Documentation, representation of your data plays a huge role in clinical research, and not only clinical research, in all the domains what we are working out. We will try to bring up some discussion on the regulatory stuff and what value addition or the concepts which we have to understand while addressing the solution. But in terms of the use cases, I'd like to mention 3 use cases here. The first thing is about bringing down the bottlenecks in the workflows. So when a patient goes into an ER and then sees a doctor, between that phase, once he or she walks into the ER and sees the doctor, there are hundreds and hundreds of workflows, people who get involved in the triage process. There's a lot of bottleneck involved there in the process. And also the big thing what I want to talk about here is pre-authorizations. I know healthcare is not a very simple thing. There are many people involved. There are a lot of workflows. It's a very costly stuff. It's not easy. There is hospitals who have to manage these workflows, get these funds so that they can drive these processes, workflows. So we're going to touch a little bit more detail about these pre-authorizations, how AI can bring in efficiencies and bring in reduction in these bottlenecks. The transcriptions, the healthcare community knows whenever there is a visit, there is this doctor having some dictations which need to be transcribed so that it goes into their payments for the insurance companies, because all that needs to be documented. How the physician saw, when did he see, what was his observations, what was his differential diagnosis, what are the tests which were advised. All these things take off a lot of manual work, administrative stuff. So it's adding a layer of administrative burden. And can AI help us resolve or bring in efficiencies? The answer is certainly yes, because we are going into a phase where we're not talking about Gen AI. I'm not talking about a chat bot or an assistant who is just trying to give you answers, but we are in the age of agentic generative applications where generative AI agents are able to reason and are able to complete the processes of a particular task. And there is a word of caution here. Again, our friend Ron mentioned about the information about the guardrails, what we have to talk about, what are the applications which we can imagine. So before going into the guardrails, just a step back. So we talked about software as a service, or software as a medical device. And these devices need to be validated, need to undergo clinical evaluation in order to ensure that these algorithms get into these approvals and they are doing what they are supposed to do. So I'm just cognizant about the time. With very little time, I'm just going to brush upon the guardrails and then I'm going to conclude. In terms of the guardrails, what I want to talk about is 2 important concepts. We had our good old friend FDA, Health Canada, and the MHRA from United Kingdom introduced back in 2017, something called as the good machine learning practices for the medical devices. And what it really emphasizes is there are 10 guiding principles, out of which my favorite thing is number 7 and number 10. Number 7 talks about human in the loop. So what exactly HITL stands for? Human in the loop. So basically, just to cut it down, making it very simple, you train a model, you have a solution. The ultimate solution or the decision maker would be a human. So if you give an example, you could have an app which could take an input as a data like an image. It could be an image, or it could be a symptom, an audio file. And there is this algorithm which provides an inference, and the output which comes out of this SAMD, or the software as a medical device, the algorithm which is changed, it provides an output which has to be finally decided by a human, a physician or an expert in that field, who decides that whatever the augmented AI system is producing as an output is clearly understood, and the decision is made by the physician. So that is very important. And coming to the last point, the number 10, which talks about continuous evaluation and continuous revisiting of these deployed models. So this, my friends, lands to me with my final slide, which is about questions. If there are any questions I can take or I can answer, I would be glad to go about it. And again, we are very cognizant about the time, and I know my fellow team members are waiting for their presentation as well. So if there are any questions, we can take it. And thank you so much for this opportunity, Linda, and for Centricity, who's engaging in this amazing summit, AI summit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lakkavalli, and a very interesting chain of thoughts you brought forward. And I'm sure that Wole is able to address already immediately some of the points that you brought up, but certainly lots of stuff to think about. And we have a Q&A session at the end of the 2.5 hours. Not sure if you will be there, but any question related to your presentation will be forwarded to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Over to you all. Thank you so much.
Wole, maybe you would like to introduce yourself in a few sentences.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Can you hear and see me okay?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for your indulgence. I had some technical issues getting connected, but glad to be on. And thank you, Linda, for inviting me. It's incredible for me to realize that it's been a year since the last conference. I think we talked about that. There's been so much change and just the pace of innovation in AI since just 1 year ago has been breathtaking. And so the time is passing quickly. So my name is Wole Moses, and I'm the Chief AI Officer for Microsoft Federal Civilian, based here in the U.S. And in my role, I work with the federal civilian agencies, government agencies in the U.S. to help them in their AI adoption and in AI use cases, as well as to understand how to implement AI responsibly. Next slide, please. All right, and so my talk today will be about AI assistance. I want to thank the previous speakers. In particular, I like the optimistic tone that the previous speaker, Dr. Amrith, took with respect to the possibilities that AI can present to us. And so I'll build on that point of view with some specific examples. But I wanted to start here in terms of why do we keep hearing about AI? It seems like in the past 2 years we can't escape the topic, and so we know that AI isn't new. So what is different about this particular AI, and in particular generative AI? What's so different about it, and what are the opportunities that it presents that have engendered all this conversation and in some cases a little bit of angst? And so if you take a step back and think about what we've always had from an enterprise computing context, we've always had this, by the way, is a tweet that I included in my presentation because it really spoke to me, and I think it did a good job of encapsulating the impact and the value of generative AI. So it's from Aaron Levy, who's the founder and CEO of Box.com. I'm not going to read the entire tweet. I've essentially distilled the main points down into a few bullets here and added a few of my thoughts. But essentially what he's saying is that in the enterprise context, we've always had great tools and great ways to manage, search, and analyze structured data. So if we think about structured data, maybe in a clinical trials context, that might be some of the demographic data that is collected, stored, analyzed, and used. It might be another form of structured data might be lab results. That might include things like adverse event logs. Like we have great tools and methodologies. A lot of times we're using databases and some other types of systems to get to analyze and search through this structured data. But the thing that he's pointing out here in this tweet is that, coincidentally, in the enterprise context, most data is actually unstructured data. And so we, again, think about that in the clinical trials context or any sort of clinical context. That unstructured data might be things like clinical notes. It could be research papers. Think about all of the research papers that are published, read through, and interpreted. It could be policy and regulatory documents that we need to read through and understand, patient diaries, and then not to mention some of the unstructured data from the tools we use, including emails, chats, et cetera, et cetera. And so the majority of the data that is used in most enterprises are unstructured in format. So the value and the new thing the thing that's creating a lot of excitement about generative AI is because for the first time, we have a way to use AI to reason over unstructured data. A lot of that unstructured data that I just called out, the research papers, the regulatory and policy documents, those had to be read and interpreted by humans. In some cases, because we have limited bandwidth, we have time constraints, we really don't have an opportunity to extract full value from them. We don't have an opportunity to read as many research papers as we might want to. We don't have the opportunity to go into a lot of the policy and regulatory documents that we might want to, that we could extract value from. And so
Please
yes.
excuse me if I interrupt you here. I just see from our participants that on some screens, your presentation is not available. So I'm just trying to switch one more time.
Okay.
And just a note to everybody, please, who cannot see Ron's presentation at the moment. The title is What's So Different About Generative AI? It might help if you refresh the browser. So for everybody who's not seeing Wole's presentation, please refresh the browser. Thank you very much.
No problem. Okay, so yeah, really the main point is that generative AI for the first time gives us a way to leverage artificial intelligence to read through unstructured data that we previously, as humans, quite frankly, didn't have the bandwidth to fully capitalize on. And so that's what's really interesting. And the other thing that we're seeing, and I'll talk about some of the use cases, some of the real world use cases that are emerging, is with generative AI, we can also transform unstructured data into structured data. And so think about a research paper, a lengthy research paper. Imagine extracting just key data points from lots of research papers and then doing analysis on those. That's the type of thing we can do with generative AI, which is so innovative and different from previous forms of AI. Next slide, please. All right, so in my presentation, I'm going to build on what the previous speaker, Dr. Amrith, talked about in terms of some of the tooling and in infrastructure and platforms that are some of the real world applications of AI. And so from a Microsoft perspective, we really have two different approaches to offering AI tooling, generative AI in particular, for our customers. And so you've probably heard about things like co-pilots. And so we have lots of different co-pilots. I'll define that in a minute. And then we also, from a Microsoft perspective, have platforms and tools for others to build on. So the co-pilots are these ready-made applications that we built and where we've infused generative AI into existing applications. And so these are sort of ready-made for people to use. And then the second part of what we offer are tooling and platforms, APIs for organizations to build their own custom generative AI solutions for the scenarios that Microsoft, quite frankly, isn't necessarily building for. Next slide, please. All right, so what is an AI Copilot? So an AI Copilot, so a couple of things I'll talk about in terms of defining an AI Copilot. So an AI Copilot is a conversational interface. So think about why ChatGPT took off so quickly and why ChatGPT is one of the most used applications today. Well, it's because of the ability to use conversational language to ask questions based on the knowledge that it's been trained on. And so that conversational interface is a key part of what defines a co-pilot. And so we think about this in an enterprise context. With ChatGPT, we use ChatGPT to surface knowledge based on what it's been trained on, which is essentially the entirety of the internet. So that's one thing. In an enterprise context, we use conversational interface similar to ChatGPT to surface knowledge based on what's the data that we have within our enterprise. I'll talk about that a little bit more and give you some examples. The second thing about that defines a co-pilot is that these are typically integrated into existing applications. So co-pilots are typically not new applications. They are basically where we have existing SaaS applications and we infuse generative AI capabilities into them, creating an intelligent experience, an intelligent assistant within that existing application. And so Microsoft has lots of different co-pilots. For example, we have one called GitHub Copilot. Our very first Copilot was GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot is artificial intelligence infused into we have a tool called Visual Studio Code, which is a programming environment. And so we've infused conversational language, generative AI into that tool to augment software coding and to augment software migration tasks. And so we now have an intelligent experience inside of that application. Copilot for Microsoft 365, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Again, similar, another SaaS application. It was a standalone application that we've now infused generative AI into, creating a more intelligent version of that application. The third bullet is really key. And so another really important thing about co-pilots is that they are grounded on data specific to the application. And so I talked about earlier ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is essentially it's trained on everything on the internet. Think about it that way. Well, Copilot for Microsoft 365 is grounded on information within your Microsoft 365, within your Office 365 environment. So your documents, your emails, your chats, your OneDrive and SharePoint files that you've been given permission to, only what you've been explicitly given permission to. So that's the difference between something like an enterprise Copilot and ChatGPT. An enterprise Copilot is grounded on can access things inside of the enterprise that ChatGPT was never trained on. And then the fourth thing about Copilots are that they're designed to increase productivity, knowledge, and the capabilities of users of that application. So we're infusing a conversational interface into an existing SaaS application in order to augment the user of that application. Next slide, please. All right, so I wanted to, for those who haven't seen Copilot for Microsoft 365, I wanted to give you an example of how I use Copilot for Microsoft 365 in my day. So Copilot for Microsoft 365 is, if you use Microsoft 365 out there, you know that it's the productivity, it's a set of productivity tools and environments from Microsoft. So this is all about knowledge worker productivity, collaboration. We have Microsoft Teams, we have Outlook, we have all these different applications in there, which are really about productivity. And so the idea around Copilot for Microsoft 365 is that, so we're going to take this Microsoft 365 environment and we're going to build an intelligent assistant in that environment. It's almost like giving everyone a personal assistant or a chief of staff to help you reason over all of the things that you do within your Microsoft 365 environment. And so some of the things that I do, a few ways I use Microsoft 365, and I think these are pretty universal tasks for most people. So the first way is just getting ready for my day, getting started and getting organized, especially if I've been traveling or I've been out of the office with meetings. And so in the blue, you'll see, so these, by the way, these are real screenshots from my Microsoft 365 implementation. And so I'm showing you some prompts that I use and the responses. I've redacted, if you see the orange blocks there, those are redactions where some of my colleagues' names are in there. And so on their behalf, I've redacted some of that. But here I'm asking Copilot to summarize my emails, my Teams message, and my Teams channel messages from the last week where I've been explicitly mentioned, where someone's actually said my name or asked me to do something. So think about this in terms of being out of the office in a busy week of meetings or due to travel, and you come back into the office, you got all this email, familiar task familiar scenario for many people, I'm sure, and you just want to get to the things that are most important, because you get a lot of emails that you're copied on, but maybe there's no action for you. And so this prompt is designed to help me just get to the bottom of all that. So I said, summarize all those things where I've been mentioned explicitly, and then also put it in a table format, because for me, the way I think, I like to see things in tables. It really helps me organize myself and understand my actions. And then I've asked it to tell me where there are actions assigned to me, because that's what I care about. And then I've also said, hey, use your intelligence to even where there haven't been explicit actions, tell me what you think I should do as follow-ups. And so that's what it's done here. So if you had a chance to look at that, these are some of the real things that in the past week that have been asked of me, the action items assigned to me, and then the suggested follow-ups. And so here's that modality that I talked about in terms of having a personal assistant or a chief of staff shadowing me, who only has access to what I have access to, but helping me get organized in my day. Next slide, please. All right, second scenario, second way I use Copilot is in meetings. Who out there is in lots of meetings all day, all week? I certainly am. And so the second way, and probably the game changer scenario for me, again, I think this is universal no matter what you do in your professionally, is to have more efficient meetings. And so this prompt here, I'm not sure if you can read it, but I say at the top, I say, catch me up on this meeting. So there's a meeting that I was invited to, but I had to miss because of a meeting conflict, or maybe I was traveling. And so I had my colleagues turn on Copilot during that meeting. So Copilot isn't on by default. You have to explicitly turn it on. And so I had my colleagues use Copilot during that meeting, so that when I came back into the office, I could just query Copilot about what happened in the meeting. And that's what I've done here. So I came back, I said, hey, catch me up on this meeting, so I don't have to listen to the recording, and so I don't have to use my colleagues' time to get a debrief from the meeting. Copilot can do that for me. So it went through, it gave me a summary of the meeting. It told me all the key points. I can ask follow-up questions at the bottom of the screen. I asked, were there any actions assigned to me during this meeting that I missed? And so it told me that there were no actions assigned to me, thankfully. And then the other thing that you can do is that think about these environments where you're operating in sort of multinational environments, and you have folks who speak different languages. You can also ask it to translate it. And so in this case, I say, hey, translate this meeting summary that you just did into Turkish. I can do it in many, many languages. And so it translated that meeting summary into Turkish for me. Let's say I'm a Turkish native speaker, and it's easier for me to understand and process that. And so that's what it's done there. Now, the other way that you can use, so these are scenarios where I use Copilot for a meeting that I missed. You can also use Copilot during a meeting. Let's say I joined a meeting 10 minutes late, and I want to catch up on the meeting without distracting from the meeting itself. I can, in the background, ask Copilot, hey, what's happened in the meeting so far? What are the key points that have been discussed, et cetera, et cetera. So second way I use it is catching up on meetings. Next slide, please. And then the third thing that I wanted to share here is really around knowledge sharing and collaboration in an enterprise environment. One of the biggest problems within enterprise environments is that there's so much expertise and knowledge within the environment, but we often don't know who to go to or where to go for that information. So you've got maybe really good documents stored somewhere on a SharePoint or a OneDrive, and you have experts within the organization, but how do you know how to find it? And that's where that conversational interface that I talked about earlier. So similar to what we can do within ChatGPT, within Copilot for Microsoft 365, we can use conversational language to ask questions and to get information that's stored within our Microsoft 365 environment. And so in this case, I'm asking who in the company knows about our so this is a very Microsoft specific question. So quantum computing, if you're familiar with it, is one of the next breakthroughs in technology, and a lot of folks are concerned about it because it could make a lot of the ways we do encryption today irrelevant. And so a lot of our customers are asking, what is the Microsoft Quantum readiness strategy? I don't, within within the organization I sit in, we don't have any experts, but within larger Microsoft, we do. And so I asked that question, and it showed me some research papers that folks within all of Microsoft have written. And it also told me who some of those experts are. These are not people who I know, and these are not people who I would have easily found, but Copilot was able to find them for me. So again, I just showed you 3 different ways that I use Copilot: getting ready for my day, using it in meetings, and then finding information within the organization. I think those are probably applicable to most organizations. Next slide, please. All right, so I tried to sort of think about a day in the life of a clinical trial professional with Copilot. Again, the tasks that the scenarios that I just outlined are, I think, pretty universal, but think about this in the work that you might do. So let's say you're a clinical research coordinator. Wouldn't it be incredible to have this intelligent assistant be able to automatically draft patient visit summaries and follow-up emails? By the way, Copilot doesn't function as an autopilot. We called it Copilot for a reason. And so anything it does, it will actually, it might create a summary for you, but it won't send it. These are just, it helps you to accelerate your process, but it lets you, the user is the person empowered to either send that summary, you can revise it, update it. You are in complete control. A principal investigator accessing expertise from within the organization related to some complex aspect of a clinical trial. I showed you that example of me asking a question about quantum computing and being able to find the expertise within my organization. Using just conversational language to do that is really the game changer. And then a regulatory affairs specialist using meeting summaries. Let's say I'm in a meeting about drug regulation in some other part of the world, and I want to make sure that I have a meeting summary, and I want to make sure that meeting summary is accurate and with follow-ups and details that I can use. Also, I can translate the language. One thing that I forgot to point out in the previous slides were that when we ask Copilot when Copilot presents us with information, you may have seen it included references it's part of its response. And so that's really around reliability and accuracy. So how do we make sure that the information that it presented is accurate? Well, it presents us references so that I can go back and validate it. And so that's an important part of so the first speaker, I think, maybe portrayed a little bit of a scary view of AI. A lot of these problems that have been initially called out, some of the sort of the problems that have been called out about why AI is unsafe, those problems are being solved for today. And so that's one example. I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. Next slide, please. All right, so I just talked about Copilots, and in particular, Copilot for Microsoft 365, one of the Copilot tools that Microsoft is releasing. The other way that Microsoft is helping organizations with generative AI is by providing tools and platforms for organizations to build their own bespoke generative AI capabilities, their own tools. Microsoft does a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that we don't do and that we will never do. So what if you could build your own organizational copilots for your own processes, for your own use cases? That's what we do with some of the tools that we have, including tools like Azure AI Studio. And so with that tool set, you can build, for example, in this space, HIPAA compliant solutions. You can build conversational search on private data types of solutions. I'll give you some examples of what we're seeing happen right now with many customers. You can build solutions to analyze and extract insights from unstructured data. So imagine you have a bunch of research papers and you only care about a few things from 100 research papers, and you want AI to automatically pull out those details from those papers. Those are the types of things that folks are doing with generative AI. Building agent solutions, AI agents as well, customer service chatbots, using lots of different models, and then underlined with data privacy, security, responsible AI as well. That's an important part of the overall infrastructure with which an organization should build on top of. Next slide, please. All right, so here's some of the use cases that we're seeing. So we've had generative AI services available to to enterprise organizations for about 1.5 years now. So what I'm showing you here is what we're seeing in the U.S. federal government context, the space that I operate in. But again, I think some of these will be universally applicable. And so what are some of those top use cases for organizations who are building their own custom generative AI solutions? Well, content generation. So generative AI, almost by definition, is very good at generating things. And so synthesizing, we're seeing in that category, we're seeing a lot of organizations that have lots of reports that they have to generate. They're using generative AI to assist them in the generation of those reports, not making up things in the reports, but pulling in existing data and synthesizing it into a coherent report. We're also seeing organizations like CDC, agencies like the Center for Disease Control, using generative AI to revise and update their websites. They have websites that are meant to communicate with citizens, but many of these websites are written by PhDs. And so the altitude at which they're communicating may not be understood by the average citizen. So CDC went out on an initiative to rewrite many of their websites using generative AI, and that's been quite successful. Document analysis, I've talked about this at length. The ability to use generative AI to analyze and extract insights from lots of different documents at scale is really a game changer for many organizations. Application modernization, many of our customers have legacy codes that they need to modernize, old languages that there are very diminishing number of people who can program in and understand. Generative AI has seen that old software language and is able to convert it, first of all, document it to explain what it's doing, and then convert it into a modern language. Search and knowledge mining. So imagine being able to develop a solution similar to ChatGPT, where we can use conversational language to ask questions, but in this case, we're using conversation to ask questions about our own documents. Let's say we want to build an application to use conversational language to interpret research that we've done, or to interpret policies that we have to abide by. Those are the types of solutions that many organizations are developing. And then customer service, both customer service chatbots, but also call center analysis. We have lots of different customers who have lots of call center calls that are recorded, but they don't have the manpower to actually listen to all of those call center calls to understand what's happening. That's another example of generative AI being able to listen to and interpret that unstructured set of call center calls and then derive insights based on what we care about. Next slide, please. So here's a really cool example from NIH called Trial GPT. So NIH, as many of you know, and as many organizations are responsible for, is really in the business of doing clinical trials. And one of the big problems that they face is matching patients to the right types of clinical trials. And so they built this application using one of our Azure platform services, the Azure OpenAI service called Trial GPT. You can read about it, but it's basically really about clinical patient to clinical trial matching. And what they found is that it improved the clinical trial matching by 43%. So a really good example of how an organization can build their own bespoke generative AI solution that is applicable to some of the problems that they're trying to solve in this case with NIH. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's also the matter of truthfulness. You've heard maybe with the first speaker, and maybe in general, you've heard like this whole concept around hallucination. How can I trust generative AI platforms or generative AI tools are telling me the truth? How do I make sure that the outputs are reliable? Let's talk about that in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So if you heard the concept of hallucinations, if you're not familiar with that terminology, are described as when a generative AI tool gives an output that is not grounded in the truth, that is, an untruthful output. And so that might happen for lots of different reasons. One of the reasons it happens is that someone may ask generative AI a question that the generative AI tool or platform has never been trained on. And so in this case, I asked this question. So I'm in this, what the environment I'm showing you here is called the Azure OpenAI environment. So this is the Azure AI Studio. So this is an environment that organizations can use to build their own generative AI capabilities. And so I'm asking here, what topics will be covered at this Integrity Virtual Conference, October 8th, 2024. And so this model has been trained up until, I think, 2022, the model that I'm asking this question to. So there's no way it would know the answer to this question. In the past, it might have actually made up an answer. But again, AI is improving. So what happened, the AI that we saw 6 months ago or the capability we saw 1 year ago, is not the same thing. It's actually tough to keep up with the new capabilities. And so what we're seeing here is that it actually saying, I don't know the answer to that question. Go to the website and maybe find out the answer to the question there. So that's a better response than we may have gotten maybe a year ago. And so let's go to the next slide. I'll tell you how we can actually ensure that we get the answers that we want. Okay, so the next thing that I did here, so there's a technique, there's an architectural pattern called retrieval augmented generation. So it is the pattern that we use within Copilots like Copilot for Microsoft 365. It is what others who are building search-based generative AI solutions are using. So retrieval augmented generation means that we're going to find the authoritative source of information. We're going to bring that to the model, and then we're going to let the model read it. We're not going to rely on the model to use its knowledge that it's been trained on or not trained on to give us an answer. We're going to actually go to the authoritative source. And so what I'm doing in this example here is I'm going to what you see me doing is a screenshot of this Integrity webpage for this conference. And I cut and paste day 1, October 8th, the agenda for this day. I've cut and pasted, and I went back to the same tool and I asked the same question with a difference. I said, what topics will be discussed on October 8th? Below is what you know, and I pasted this information from the webpage. And then let's go on to the next page here. Next slide, please. And so now when I've done that, it can answer the question correctly. So what have I shown you here? I've shown you a poor man's version of retrieval augmented generation. So what I showed you is how applications are being built to provide reliable outputs from a generative AI system. So what we do is we don't rely on the generative AI system's knowledge to answer the question. We use an intermediary. In my case, it was me going to this Integrity webpage. In reality, it would be a search engine or search technology. We use the search technology to extract the authoritative information. And the only thing we need the generative AI tool to do is accept conversational inputs and questions, and then give us conversational outputs. So that is one of the ways, retrieval augmented generation is one of the ways that we're getting reliable outputs from generative AI systems. And then the way these will work as well is that they will provide citations as well to say, hey, here's the source of my information. You can go take a look there for more information. Next slide, please. There are other generative AI risks as well, though. So there's a risk of harmful outputs, hate, sexual violence, etc. So how do we mitigate against those? There's a risk of jailbreak. I think the first speaker talked about that one at length. Ungrounded outputs, which is kind of what I showed you there in the previous couple of slides. And then protected or copyrighted materials. These are all areas of loss of innovation. These are all areas where what generative AI did 6 months ago or 1 year ago is not what generative AI is doing today. Next slide, please. And so just speaking from a Microsoft context, we built extensive content safety capabilities into the platform, and we continue to iterate on those. And so some of the things, these are some examples. This is a look at our content safety tooling within the Azure AI platform. So you can moderate for content. So you can ensure that your generative AI tooling is not responding with hateful or harmful output. There's tooling inside to test the groundedness of your AI application to make sure that when it answers the questions, those questions are grounded in real knowledge that it has access to. Protected material content, we can ensure that protected or copyrighted material is not being output. By the way, Microsoft also offers indemnification for our customers who use our tools around copyright lawsuits, et cetera. And then jailbreak indirect and direct jailbreak attempts, all tooling and infrastructure to test for and to mitigate as well, all built in. Next slide, please. That's my last slide. I'm not sure if I have time for questions. I know there's a panel a little bit later, but this is probably a good place to stop. So again, I have probably a more optimistic view than the first presenter, maybe more aligned to Dr. Amrith around what the potential of generative AI can be and what it is. There are lots of regulatory frameworks out there. In the case of the U.S. federal government, the White House issued an AI executive order, and then there have been subsequent memos from throughout the government to ensure that government agencies are building and deploying AI responsibly. And we have lots of confidence in those frameworks. And we're seeing I think the real key when we think about generative AI is to have a balance. So we need to think about responsible AI. We need to think about guardrails, but we don't want to over pivot in either direction. We also want to think about the innovative possibilities. Dr. Amrith talked about some life-saving possibilities of generative AI. So we want to think about both. We want to make sure there's a balance between innovation and responsible AI. And from what I see, we're on the right path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wole, for your insights. And I myself can tell that applications like Copilot are very useful. In clinical research, we deal with lots of unstructured data, as you already mentioned. We have archives here, libraries there, databases there. And these projects, clinical trial projects, they span over many years, many phases. There's lots of communication, lots of data gathered over time. And we have it running inside of not inside of our technology, but inside of our office application. So if we prepare for a project, what costed us maybe the work of a team spread over a couple of weeks, I can do it in a couple of hours by prompting and having the Copilot search into our archives and compare previous projects, fine-tune them to new ones. And also what I find very useful is the links. You can always verify where is this information coming from. There's direct links in there.
Right.
So I'm a fan of using it, but with a critical view always. Do we have any questions, Tamara?
Yes, we received some questions. Just a moment, please, and I'm going to read them to you. Does Copilot dig through employees' personal folders on an enterprise's server? I know a problem is that folks may save process documents on a personal OneDrive, but that's not available to the wider organization.
Yeah, so thank you. Great question. So Copilot won't go in, when you say a personal OneDrive, are you talking about what? Let me answer the question in a couple of different ways. So if you're talking about your OneDrive that is within your Office 365, Microsoft 365 environment, that Copilot will have access to that. If you're talking about OneDrive from your personal OneDrive from Outlook.com, not an enterprise component of Office 365, you won't have access to that. So I guess in short, it only has access to what's in your Microsoft 365 environment. So your Microsoft 365 OneDrive, the SharePoints that you have access to, your email, as well as your Teams messages, Teams chats and channels.
Thank you very much. And I would like to address the next question, although I must say I'm not really sure if that is a question for you now. If you cannot answer it, we will then pick it up again later at our question and answer session. So, excuse me. Can we anticipate any global guidelines by the safety committee, for example, such as ICG, GCP for clinical trials?
Yeah, so that doesn't seem like that's a question for me, but maybe we can, as you said, we can take that during the panel.
Thank you. Thank you. We will do that. And what have been the greatest 2 or 3 challenges for organizations implementing Copilot or other AIs? What 2 or 3 organizational characteristics or decisions are most likely to lead to success?
Great question. I'd say some of the challenges that we're seeing, or some of the challenges that organizations have experienced, is first of all, understanding generative AI. So, generative AI is very different from the way that we've experienced AI up until now. So, one of the new things about generative AI is that it is probabilistic in its response. So, previous versions of AI are what we call deterministic. When you ask a question, is this a cat or a dog? It will answer that question definitively. Generative AI is different in that when you ask generative AI, if you ask a question to generative AI and I ask the same question, our responses will be similar, but they may be a little bit different. And so that's what we call a probabilistic type of response in generative AI. So first of all, it's just understanding concepts like that, and then also understanding the concept of prompting. One of the interesting things about generative AI is that iterative prompting, it will deliver good results. And so if you've ever used ChatGPT, for example, and you've asked a question and maybe ChatGPT answered the question, but not exactly what you wanted, and then you go back and you refine your question a little bit more. And so what we're seeing is that working with generative AI is very similar to working with humans. So imagine a new person in your office, or someone who's a direct report. You've given them a task, they respond, but maybe not quite in the way that you want, and you have to refine and refine until you get exactly what you're looking for. And so that's one of the things that's different. So that learning curve around how do you interact with generative AI versus how you may have interacted with other systems in the past. And then the other thing that I think has been, I wouldn't say difficult, but it's just been a new experience, is just understanding it and really figuring out what are the right use cases for the organization. So what are the right places for us to use to build generative AI solutions within the organization? What are the best? Most organizations, when they're new to it, want to start with low risk use cases. So what are some of those low risk use cases that we should start with? So I would say those are some of the top things I would call out. The adoption piece in making sure that folks understand how generative AI is different and how to best use it, and then thinking through the right use cases for the particular organization.
Thank you very much. And one more time, I'm checking the chat here. So the list is pretty long already. Most of the questions, as already said, are from the other sessions before. We will address them at the end. Thanks everybody for sending them. One more, please, for you, Wole. While very good to an extent, generally, I see nightmare scenario here in the healthcare domain, let alone a medical domain.
Was that a question or a comment?
Yeah, a comment, I guess.
Okay.
Maybe something we can say to that.
I think
It was a comment. I'm sorry, it was a comment. The participant
I would
just
say in
replied.
general, I wouldn't yet. I would need to maybe explore a little bit more what the concerns are. In general, I think the way to look at any technology can be thought of as both a tool or a weapon, right? So that's where I talked about that balance. And so while we could probably imagine nightmare scenarios for any technology, there are also probably many life-changing scenarios as well. So I think it's really about understanding both and ensuring that we have guardrails to account for some of those other scenarios, but we are still taking advantage of the possibilities and the benefits of the technology.
All right. Thank you very much, Wole. It was great to have you here as our speaker. And I would now like to come to our next session here. That is about bias and fairness. And I'm really happy to welcome Sigrid Berge van Rooijen, the AI business consultant AR Health, and Sigrid helps healthcare companies implement AI-driven solutions to improve patient outcomes and supports clinicians in delivering better care. Welcome, Sigrid, and over to you, please. And sorry to everybody who cannot see the new presentation here, then please refresh your browser. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tamara. So hi, I'm Sigrid. I work with healthcare companies to help them understand how they can use AI, how to implement AI solutions, and also considering the risks of AI. I also get trainings on the topic. And today I'm very excited to talk to you about bias and fairness in AI solutions. You can just start the presentation, Tamara. So in AI, there are, it's not only, a wonderful world where everything is perfect. There are some biases and there are fairness issues when it comes to AI in clinical research, but also in AI in general. Next slides, please. For example, did you know that women have a 50% higher chance of receiving the wrong initial diagnosis after a heart attack? Mainly because women can experience other symptoms than men. If you look at this slide, and I'm sorry I cannot use a pointer because I had to call in from my computer, from my phone today. But if you look at the symptoms, you can see that women have far more symptoms and diverse set of symptoms, and a bit vague as well, compared to men. And this is an example of bias in healthcare in general, not in just AI, but where doctors and patients, they are expecting all the symptoms to be similar between men and women, but that is not the case. Another example is from the US, where an algorithm was used to predict complications during vaginal births after C-section. The algorithm incorporated race as a factor, but this led to unequal risk assessments for Black women versus white women. Unfortunately, there are so many examples about how bias in AI tools impact health and patient outcomes. But bias in AI tools are health-related and non-health related. But the challenge with health and clinical tools is that you're gambling with people's lives and the quality of life. Next slide, please. And then there will be a poll. So have you ever seen clinical studies excluding women of childbearing age? I just want to know that, so if you can put the poll up.
Yes, thank you very much. And the poll is available for everyone on the screen now. Once again, the question, have you ever seen clinical studies excluding women of childbearing age? And you can select one answer, please. Fantastic. Thank you all very much. And I'm going to close the poll now and present the results. So here we go.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. So the results, as you can see, 54% have seen this in clinical studies. Surprisingly, 30% have not seen this. This is surprising to me. And you have 16% that have not thought about it. I've never worked with clinical studies myself, but I have looked into whether I could participate in studies. And this was one of the reasons I could not because of my age. And this shows that the data that you're collecting in clinical research, because you're excluding quite a big proportion of the population, can lead to bias later. I'm going to talk a bit more about AI in clinical research. I'm going to come back to this as well. Next slide, Tamara. Thank you. Because as you've already heard today about their different type of AI tools. So from home assistants like Siri and Alexa, email spam filters, GPS route suggestions, and generative AI. But in medicine and clinical research, there are also quite a lot of different type of AI tools you can use. So for example, you have AI for patient recruitment, where AI algorithms can analyze big amounts of electronic health records to identify potential candidates for clinical trials on specific inclusion and exclusion criteria. This can really speed up recruitment processes reduce the time it takes to find suitable participants from weeks to minutes. Secondly, you have AI for real-time safety monitoring. So AI systems continuously monitor clinical trial data, analyzing patient information in real time to detect potential safety concerns or adverse events, which again can enable immediate action to protect patient safety and ensure regulatory compliance. You can also use AI for protocol design optimization. So by analyzing historical trial data, scientific literature to suggest optimal study design, including patient selection criteria, endpoint measurements, and dosing schedules. This can lead to more efficient and effective trial protocols, potentially increasing chances of trial success. And then you have AI for automated document review. So by reviewing and analyzing regulatory documents, and you can identify errors, inconsistencies, or missing information. So this can ensure compliance with regulatory standards and accelerate the submission process. But yeah, and there's a couple of more benefits as well with AI for clinical research that are not mentioned on this slide. But for example, you can have more accurate diagnosis. So by using images to detect cancer, but with that you can accurate diagnose, but you can also be able to see the effect of your treatment. You can have faster drug development by streamlining processes, reducing time to market, cost reductions by automating tasks, lowering operational costs, and improved data analysis. So for more insights in an efficient way. Next slide, please. But there are some issues, and AI is not free of flaws. So I have a question for you again. Why are there biases in AI tools? So there are 4 questions here, and it's a multiple choice.
Yes, right. We have 4 answers displayed on the screen now to the question, why are there biases in AI tools? And here you can select all that apply or that you wish. Okay. I see the answers are coming in pretty quick here. That's great. So I'm going to stop here and present the results now. We have them on the screen. Yes, Sigrid.
I don't have them on the screen, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good. Then let me guide you, please. We have the unrepresentative or insufficient training data with a 26% rate here. Then we have answer B, developer biases and lack of diversity in development teams with 23%. 24% is algorithmic design choices that reinforce existing biases. And again, 26% historical prejudices reflected in data sets. So all is almost the same here.
Yeah.
The answers, yeah, equaled out. Very good.
Good. Can you also see if people press more than 1? Is that possible to see?
No, I'm sorry, I cannot tell you that. Please excuse.
No, I want to know everyone's answer. No, so to this answer, actually all of them apply. So, and I think that shows a bit in the results as well, that is quite equal. So all of these are reasons for biases in AI tools. So having with the training data, developer bias and lack of a diversity in teams, algorithmic design choices, and historical prejudices in data sets. So some of them are quite much about data. And that's the thing, that the risks of AI doesn't come from anywhere. Much of it stems from one big issue, and that is your current data. So your algorithm is as unbiased as your data. So if your data is not biased, well, then you have a chance that your algorithm is also not biased. So there are a couple of different types of biases in AI in clinical research. There are more than this. I'm just going to highlight these 3. One of them is selection bias. So data being used to train AI algorithm does not adequately represent a diverse population that clinical trials aim to study. So this can lead that AI systems are making recommendations or predictions that are skewed towards certain demographic groups, potentially excluding or misrepresenting others. So for example, with the one that we had with women, if they're excluded, well, then you have skewed data towards men. So it's really about the data. Secondly, you have the data bias in general. So that occurs when the data sets used to train AI algorithms contain inherent biases, such as historical disparities in health access or treatment. So an AI system trained on biased data can perpetuate and amplify existing inequalities in healthcare. So say that you have minority groups, they would less likely visit the doctor when they are sick, or they might get a different type of treatment when they're sick. Well, that's going to be reflected in this data with the data bias, because if they get different treatment or later treatment, or for an example, I think I saw half a year ago that the study was done in the Netherlands, where people believed that Black people had a higher tolerance for pain. Well, that impacts what type of treatment they will receive. And these type of data biases can be amplified with AI systems. Then you have algorithmic biases as well. And that occurs when the AI model itself, regardless of the data, produces biased results due to its design or the assumptions built into it. So even with diverse and representative data, an AI system can still produce biased outcomes if the algorithm itself is flawed. Next slide, please. These are just some examples of bias of AI in clinical research. So just with examples we came with earlier. So when you have patient recruitment, you can have selection bias. So if algorithms are trained on non-representative data sets, it can lead to underrepresentation of certain groups, which means that the findings are not as general as you would have hoped it would be. For real-time safety monitoring, if there are data bias in this, from underrepresented populations can lead to inadequate detection of adverse events from, for example, minority groups, compromising patient safety. This can also lead to false positive alerts, leading to unnecessary interventions. So imagine that you get so many alerts that you need to go and check some safety or adverse events. Well, people are going to be sick and tired of your algorithm that's not functioning as it should be. For protocol design optimization, it really highly relies on historical data. So that one potentially perpetuates past biases and inefficiencies in trial designs. So this can lead to exclusion on innovative approaches or emerging therapies. AI can also design impractical or unethical study protocols because AI doesn't have ethics. Some might want to argue with me on that one, but it doesn't have, it misses these nuances that people might have. Most of them, so we do. Then fourth, automated document review. So AI systems can misinterpret complex medical terminology or nuanced information. It can lead to critical errors in data extraction and analysis, and that important information is overlooked or misclassified. Sometimes we have these clinical terminologies that are difficult for a general AI tool to understand. So we'll miss that essence of a clinical note, for example, which a human would see. There are a couple of other risks as well. For example, over-reliance on AI-generated insights. So researchers might become overly dependent on AI-generated analysis and recommendations, so they might overlook important nuances or context that human expertise might catch. And then you have data privacy and security breaches when unauthorized access to or leakage of sensitive patient information used for AI-driven clinical research. And this is important because that could compromise patients' confidentiality, violate privacy regulations, but also reduce the trust in AI-powered clinical research. So imagine all the benefits there are with AI in clinical research. If you lose the trust, well, then you can't really benefit by them. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, a bit back. Thank you, I didn't see this. So there are different sources of unfairness in AI in clinical trials. You have demographic imbalances in historical trial data. So AI models trained on past clinical trial data that lacks diversity, and that will perpetuate underrepresentation of certain groups, leading to biased predictions and recommendations. You have socioeconomic factors, where an AI system favoring recruitment of participants from higher socioeconomic backgrounds, which limits access to trials for underprivileged groups and reduces the generalizability of results. Sorry, that is a difficult word for me. I don't know, I'm struggling with that word. And then you have cultural and logistic biases, where AI chatbots, for example, or language models are struggling with cultural nuances and non-dominant languages. This can lead to miscommunication, reduced engagement, and higher dropout rates for certain groups. And I don't think I need to tell you what that could impact, again, with the results of this or the data you would have from these AI applications. Thank you. There's a big issue and a big talk about black boxes when it comes to AI. And for many people, AI is a black box. You look at the box, but you don't really know, one, what it is and what's inside this box. You don't understand how it comes up with a prediction it has or the answer it gives. So it's difficult to trust this black box or understand why you should trust it. And so it's really about the transparency of this, and having a black box can reduce the trust of a system. And it makes it difficult to identify or address potential biases or errors in a model's reasoning, again, leading to potential unfair or unsafe decisions. So my recommendation when it comes to black boxes is to, and also when it comes to implementing AI tools for clinical research, is to prioritize use of interpretable AI models or implement techniques to enhance the explainability of complex models. But that can provide a clear documentation of the model's decision-making for review by clinicians or ethicists or the ones who are going to use this model, so that you know and understand why it tells you a specific thing. Yeah, let's just skip this one due to time. Thank you. So due to time, I have 2 minutes left, so I need to ramble on. But here are some ways to mitigate biases in AI tools. And one of them is about the data and data auditing. So by examining training data used by external AI tools for representativeness across demographic groups, it can help you identify potential underrepresentation or issues in data that can lead to biased outcomes. And because this really, like, biased outcomes you don't want, it would really impact the AI algorithm. Then you have fairness metrics as well. Could the ones coming in mute yourself, please?
One moment, please. Yes, everybody, please go on mute. I am already preparing the panel discussion here.
Thank you. Yeah, so fairness metric evaluation, where you can use statistical partiality, equal opportunity, or predictive equity to assess AI tool performance across different groups. Interdisciplinary reviews, to have a team with different type of experts and backgrounds to reviewing AI tools and their outputs. And last, continuously monitor and update the AI tools that you're using. Because if a treatment, for example, changes, Well, the AI tool will have a different output over time, and it would also evolve over time. So it's important to regularly assess the AI tool performance because biases can emerge in the tool as well. And with this, I want to highlight that AI can also help you with mitigating some of these. Because of time, I'm not going to go that much into it, but it can mitigate both and enhance and analyze data sets to identify bias, and it can be used to improve fairness and also for continuously monitoring. With a disciplinary review, it's an interdisciplinary review, sorry, it's not that much it can be done, as I can see. Next slide, and next slide again. Next slide, Tamara, thank you. So just to end it off with transparency and explainability, it was a bit about the black box. I assume that the participants will be able to have the slides afterwards. Then you can take a look at the recommendations regarding if you want to implement a AI tool, what you can do to ensure transparency and explainability of the AI tool.
Yes, Sigrid, that's right. We are going to send everybody the slides and the link to the recording later.
Yeah, thank you. You can just skip this then, so then people can look at it. So which of the following methods can help reduce bias in AI tools for clinical research? If we have time.
Yes, we do. We do. For one more poll here, which I'm going to activate now. As Sigrid already said, which of the following methods can help reduce biases in AI tools for clinical research? What do you think? And you can select more than one answer. Which of the following methods can help reduce bias in AI tools for clinical research? Diverse training data, for example, or regular bias audits? What about interdisciplinary development teams or transparency in AI algorithms? What do you think? And I just see here in the chat, yes, you can select more than one answer. That's possible here. All right, I'm closing the poll now and present the results. And let me guide you, please, Sigrid. So we have, almost equal. 25%, again, 25% of our participants said diverse training data. Again, 25% regular bias audits, 24% voted for interdisciplinary development teams, and 25% for transparency in AI algorithms.
Yeah, well, I'm very pleased to see this because it seems like people have understood the essence of it. So there are multiple methods you can use to reduce bias, and I think all of these are important to consider. Just to summarize, AI has potential to reduce trial times, regulatory approval, and trial costs. So there are a lot of benefits for using AI in clinical trials. But you have to be aware of the biases in AI tools. And that's based on the data that we've already collected for years and years and years now. That's creating these biases. But there are ways to mitigate it. So both from a development point of view, but also when you're implementing AI tools, I would recommend being critical as well, which type of AI tools you're using, and look for transparent and explainable AI tools. Thank you so much for this bit rushed presentation, but you will have the presentation as well, so you can go back and look at how you can mitigate AI or biases in AI tools.
Fantastic, Sigrid.
I want to add one more comment to this because my feeling is that due to the technical issues we experience, I think the platform exposes a load issue that the poll data is not correct data what we are seeing. If with the next polls we are getting again equal distribution, then that is confirmed. So maybe we can do a survey afterwards again.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Thank you, Sigrid.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you also very much from my side here. And I'm preparing now for the panelist session, the panel discussion with the panel moderator, Dr. Mariana Hepborn, the Global Head of HR, AI, and Data Governance from Merck Group. Mariana leads data governance at Merck, streamlining operations through advanced data strategies for greater organizational efficiencies. And we have as the panelists here, I would like to welcome Dr. Amrith, and he is a Director Centralized Monitoring at AstraZeneca. Amrith leads the Centralized Monitoring at AstraZeneca, as already said, advancing quality management in clinical trials with risk-based tools and methodologies. So we also have Nechama Katan. She's Director Innovative Data Analytics at Pfizer. And Nechama guides organizations through complex technology projects, delivering successful outcomes by focusing on data and business needs. Megan Patterson, Associate Principal Consultant at Halloran Consulting Group. Megan works with clinical teams to improve quality assurance, ensuring readiness, and driving effective organizational development. Last but not least, welcome Nurcan Koskun, former Global Head of RBQM at Medtronic. Nurcan brings over 20 years of experience leading clinical programs and risk-based monitoring initiatives, ensuring operational clinical excellence in global projects. So our discussion today is around building trust and driving adoption. As said, panel moderator Mariana, and we can start with the panel discussion now, please.
Thank you very much, Tamara. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. And I think we can already go into the discussion. Sigrid was a very good bridge to what does trust mean in clinical trials. And to everyone out there in the chat and in front of the screens, I think this discussion is not about it's not that much about technological optimization. It's really about how to treat people's data to save life and how to build trust with the technology. By putting this triangle of people, technology, and trust, I think this is the best way how to approach how to build the trust. And with that, I would say we have a very good way to revolutionize the way we approach healthcare. And along with that, we have a lot of challenges. And Tamara, I'm looking at you. We would like to pull as a first step the audience and to look of what challenges are the biggest. What do you think about the biggest challenges in building trust when we want to organize the data in the clinical trials to drive sustainable and more efficient healthcare? The first one is ensuring data integrity, or maybe addressing the bias. We have now a very good overview about biases in tools in clinical trials and fairness in the AI models, or to demonstrate how reliable an AI is. Or do you face other challenges around?
Yes, and if, like Mariana just said, if you face other challenges, then you can select other, of course, and just put the challenges here in the chat, please, and I will read it for you. I see the answers are coming in now. That's great. Thank you all very much. Just another moment, please. I would like to give everyone a chance to vote here. Yeah, all right, that looks good. Yes, and we have the results on the screen now.
So looking at it, I think it's obvious. What is the biggest challenge? Demonstrating AI reliability and accuracy. We have also the second place goes to ensuring the data integrity. And the third one is addressing bias and fairness in the models. Thank you very much. Thank you for voting. I'm now really looking at the panelists, and I would like to hear from you. Does that align with your experience and with your daily impression in your daily work? I have Andre first on my screen. If we take the alphabetical order.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely we need to focus on good examples and evidence that our AI tools are at least as good as people. And they, in different circumstances, there are publications showing the benefit of using AI, and experiments run are showing that in general, average, the value of AI is much higher than average, even comparing to the exercise done with people. But still, the best results are driven by human beings. So we need evidence of the benefit for the humanity here.
Mariana, you're muted. Can you please turn on your microphone? Thank you.
I'm sorry, such a beginner's mistake. Thank you, Andre. Do you have maybe from the other panelists? Do you have another experience or example which is more tangible from your daily work, from your workflow, which really shows that was a challenge, and we can confirm it?
Are you asking anyone in specific?
Yes, it would be would be great just to participate, so I can call you out.
Okay. All right, I'll just speak up then. So I think that I would argue that AI is not going to be better than humans or worse than humans. That really what we want to do is AI with humans. So everyone, not everyone, they've done the studies, and a grandmaster playing chess can't beat a computer, but somebody who's a moderate chess player with AI can beat anyone, right? So it's a leveling. It's a tool that allows us to have an opportunity to take a human skills and augment it, right? Think about it as bionic arms or bionic brain, right? And you guys are going to laugh, but my group is using it most effectively to write code. So if I'm got a clinical trial and I'm trying to do some exploratory analysis, if I use it to write SQL in the right example, so I've got I've got a tech stack where my AI assistant is embedded into the tech stack, knows my data set. I can do I can put any reasonable person in front of this tool, and they can do exploratory analytics better than any full-time programmer and better than any full-time human looking at it. So the combination of a tool, and in this case, I went and did it myself. I was able to do basically 2 weeks of SQL programming in a couple hours, and mostly because I don't know syntax, right? If you're not 100% in these tools, your syntax kills you, and the tools help, but the tool didn't get me 100% of the way there. It got me 95%, and then I could tweak it, right? So it's learning how to use it. It's doing it together. I think of it, maybe another example would be a car, right? Cars can go faster than humans, but you need a driver. You would never set a car and just say go straight. You have a driver who's driving that car. So from that perspective, I find that that's where, and also it cuts down on the errors that happen, because humans know when the data is wrong. A business person knows when the data is wrong. So it allows a business person who understands the data to have the technical skills of a full-time programmer. So you get best of both worlds. So that's an example of, I think, where the AI is, the question isn't, is it better than a human or not? But in terms of what my challenges are getting access to data. In clinical trials, our data, in particular our audit trail data, is still not feeding into data lakes, feeding into our data systems in robust ways, and getting data transparency across our systems is deeply, deeply challenging, and AI can't fix that because it assumes that all the data is there and it's just not.
Thank you, Nekamana. I think what you're saying, to just to rephrase it, is the man in the loop is the value of the strategy or the way to show, to demonstrate how reliable and accurate the AI is. So
It's
check on that.
augmented. It's augmentation rather than human in the loop. Human in the loop is usually checking it. But what I say is you do human augmented AI or AI augmented with humans. I don't know who's augmenting who here, right? And then that creates then extremely powerful use cases.
Thank you for yes, the augmentation, the very valuable addition to the AI. And the other thing that you mentioned is the access to the data. The stable foundation is more the challenge than the demonstration of accuracy. Nurkan, I don't know. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce your names accurately. Nurkan, do you want to add something to that? You went off camera, but
Yes.
One moment, please. I'm sorry.
okay.
Could I
1
ask
second.
Megan to mute, please? We hear some echo in the background, and I think it's better now. Yes. But Megan, this, of course, does not mean that we do not want to hear from you, right? So if you want to speak, then please unmute. And other than that, I would like to ask you to stay muted. That it has some interferences. I don't know why it is. I'm sorry for that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Mariana, maybe.
Sorry, now it's much better, so I can understand you. My question was, what is your perspective on that? It would be really good to give at the end of an example really a small hint or a strategy to the audience. How do you address a challenge, if it's one of those challenges that we voted on, like demonstrating accuracy or ensuring the data integrity or addressing the bias and fairness in the AI models? What of those challenges do you have you witnessed already in your daily work? And what could
actually,
be
this was one of the
a way to go over those challenges?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity. And again, I mean, I was really in the medical device, and the medical device is more to involve AI as well, or collecting data, which is quite different than drug studies, because you can also, with the sensor, with the IoT and other ways, you can collect the data. And when it comes to clinical trials, we have so many data coming from so many different places. For example, medical imaging, I think we can easily use this in the AI space. But when it comes to EHR and some other data, we are still having the challenges for the interoperability, because it is also the phase that you really need to get the data that they are all talking to each other. You can really understand what it really means. And then from there, you can take and then use with the AI. I mean, we are talking about the AI, which is already long history behind it. But how it comes to healthcare is also taking time, because we are really living in a regulated world, which is, I'm not saying that the other industries are not, but ours is taking so much more time to really getting into it and really understanding and how we can really use it. And again, it really comes to interoperability, because we have so many data, structured, unstructured, and coming from this place, that place. And then when we are working, because as we talk about different challenges already, selections and diversity, not having the data because of the, how the participants were taken. Because, I mean, we start to use the diversity in the clinical trials, recently. Before it was really a certain population, but now we are getting more and more different approaches to clinical trials. So there are so many different factors that are already in clinical trials, and AI, which is another step. And I think it is really great that it is going to give us different directions, different results. But yeah, there are so many different factors that we need to think and how we can resolve as an industry. Not only, pharma, medtech, we need to come together and trying to find a solution how it can work for further developing the drugs or medical devices.
Thank you, Nurcan. We have a second confirmation of the or evidence that stable, reliable data foundation is there, but that the access to those data, as I understood it, is not there. So you are delivering from the medical devices the plenty of data, but you have problems with the access of the data because of regulatory constraints. And what you suggested is something that I really like, is so joint forces for organizing data, putting data together and democratizing it for the industry, for the users. Alliance or something would help in that case. This is something that we should have as a takeaway from the panel discussion. I'm looking at Megan because we would like to move forward. Linda, you will give me a overall time orientation, but I would like to hear also from Megan and from Wole. What is your what are your thoughts on the biggest challenges? Can you really does it reflect your working experience?
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, I think that the response on the poll was really interesting. I think I'll take it from a slightly different perspective. We spend a lot of time working with clients around data integrity. And it's been a real barrier point for a lot of folks. And I think part of it is because many sponsors on the sponsor sides who are kind of sponsoring clinical trials are not going to fully integrate or validate AI tools necessarily as a part of their clinical trial process, right? And bring that work in-house. However, they are working a lot with CROs or other vendors who are using AI tools for the data or for different parts of the clinical trial processes. And I think the piece that I would kind of bring into this is, it's really a key consideration to ensure that you have appropriate controls and kind of oversight plans from the sponsor perspective to really ensure that you have a full understanding of how AI is kind of intertwined and also leveraged across your vendors. So when I think about it from the perspective of kind of trust and building that trust within, I think that it's kind of comes from both parts of the perspective, both those who are conducting, kind of doing the work on the vendor and CRO side of the trials, but then also thinking about the sponsor experience and providing that particular oversight. So I think those pieces are really important. And if you're not doing that, we are finding kind of significant data integrity issues across various clinical trials. So I would just kind of take it from that particular, perspective.
Can I ask a quick question? Are you finding issues with, when you say data integrity issues, are you finding that the data is messy and dirty, or that you just simply don't have the data you thought you had?
Yeah, no, great question. We see it from both perspectives. Yes.
Okay. That sometimes you thought you had data and you don't, and sometimes the data it's just messy in the systems.
Exactly right. And some of it's about the tools and the systems themselves haven't been appropriately validated to ensure that you have the right data. Exactly right.
Mariana, we have time for one more poll. There's 15 minutes left. That was also
right.
Q&A, but I'll give you those 15 minutes.
That's very good. I like the discussion now with Nekama and Megan. And I have one last question to that. What could you recommend to ensure that data integrity coming from the vendors and from your partners delivering the data?
Is that question for me or for just
yes, for you, Megan?
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I think a key piece is really having an understanding of the guidelines and the regulations around systems, and really making sure that you have appropriate kind of controls and oversights for vendors and CROs, so that you are ensuring that you're not paying attention to the data at the end, or even at a midway point, but you're really ensuring that the controls are in place very early on. And that's as simple as kind of user access controls to systems. So it spans that whole way. But I think oftentimes it's kind of handed off to the vendors and the CROs without that appropriate oversight from the very beginning and continuing throughout.
I'm going to add one more thing, and that's that often we collect data about on the clinical trial. So we collect the CRF data, the non-CRF data, all the data that's going to get submitted to a regulatory agency. Okay. For those of us in risk-based monitoring, the process that the trial and the sites follow is actually more important than the outcome data, right? Our goal with central monitoring is not to say, the goal of the statistical analysis is to say, does the drug pass or fail? Our goal is to say, is the trial passing or failing? And so often what happens then is that we simply don't collect relevant process data at all. We just don't, because process data isn't being used for the clinical trials, for submitting the clinical trial data. So we need to be asking, are we collecting the right data to answer the questions? Do we know what questions we're asking? Then are we collecting the right data? Or are we just simply collecting data that someone else needs and assume that we can answer questions, which we can't, with the data that we have?
Thank you for that. Know what questions you want to answer is one valuable strategy. I don't know if the better approach it's maybe to get as much data as we can and then to pick the data that we need. This is maybe a follow-up discussion.
That's a whole nother panel. Yeah, you don't go
getting.
You really need to know what data is it that you really want, and for process control, which is what central monitoring is, the outcome data is not really the data that you want to use as primary data sources. And that's really the data that's the cleanest. So in most systems, in most companies, what data is the cleanest? The data the cleanest is the money data, the billing data, right? Medical data is a mess. Medical records are a mess, but claim data is clean, right? And
very good point.
You need to be aware. Anyway, I'm
Thank
done.
you very much. I just want to.
I think we cut off
2
Wole,
minutes.
I think he wanted
yes.
to also,
I just want to give a chance to Wole to give us an overview. What wasn't mentioned here, Wole, in a very tangible strategy to overcome the challenges we were talking about.
Sure. Yeah. So this is our Wole Moses. So I think most of it's been covered. I mean, I'll talk about in terms of generative AI. So with generative AI, when we think about the data question, there's really two questions that we we want to think about. So we think about first the foundation models, which are what make generative AI possible in terms of being able to input conversational language and have a conversational output on a vast amount of data. That data that makes that possible is essentially internet literature, which we know has biases in it, right? So when we think about it from the foundation model perspective, interacting with those, since we know there's biases from humans who've written lots of things on the internet, there are steps that have to be taken to ensure that what we call alignment happens in terms of unbiased outputs, fair outputs, et cetera. So there's a lot of different technical approaches to do that. So that's really around how do we trust that the foundation models are outputting unbiased responses. And then the other side of it is the data that the organization is pairing with the model and bringing to the model. And so some of the things that are important there in terms of maybe clinical trial data, making sure that there's good data governance and processes and the data is clean and there's maybe not multiple sources of truth. Those are important as well. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is I'm in firm agreement with Nishama around this human AI pairing. And that's actually what we've seen in terms of some of the early successes. It's not AI doing anything on its own. It's AI essentially giving people superpowers to do. She gave the great example around chess. We're seeing exactly that. Coding is one, I think I talked about in my presentation. Using AI for coding is one of that's really one of the killer apps or one of the killer use cases. And so that's really the last thing I wanted to touch on this particular topic.
Thank you very much for summarizing that. And we see stable data foundation, augmented AI. These are very good democratized data by considering the regulation and going for a joint forces democratization of the data. These are very good insights on how can we really increase the trust in AI when it's applied to clinical trials. Now I would like to hear from you what are the most difficult, or should we
Please excuse me, Mariana. We are running out of time here, and I would like to address some questions, if you don't mind,
okay, sure.
from our audience here. Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Good. And that, yeah, like I just said, so the question and answer sessions here, from bots to trusted agents was our topic. And the first question that I would like to address is, in what ways can we enhance the interpretability of AI models used in clinical trials to ensure that clinical decision makers can understand and trust AI-generated insights? And this is to all our panelists here. Please pick up the question if you think that you can give an answer to it.
I'll start. I think with explainability, that can really help if you understand, maybe not perhaps bots always, but if you can understand why the AI came to a certain conclusion and understand, it's consider it like a math piece, right? It's not like you sometimes you need the formula. So what happened in that formula? Why did it highlight certain things which you often see in the formula? So if you can highlight how we came to a conclusion, that could lead to improving the trust of that tool. Again, also how to interpret that the answer came with.
And maybe from my side, what Wole also mentioned, think about not only about the data governance, but think also about the AI governance. That should be also a pure in your AI strategy. Try to turn black box algorithms to gray box at least, and to see very transparently what is what came in as an input, what is the model doing, and try step by step really to uncover them. I know that's a lot of effort, a lot of money, but we are now in a time where AI is part of our daily work, and we need to think how to increase that trust in it. And AI governance is something that it should become a part of the strategy of each company and organization, and for the healthcare for sure.
Okay, thank you, Mariana, and also thanks a lot to Sigrid for answering that question. I would like to continue with the next one. In which phase or process of a clinical trial should AI be implemented, or when is it necessary to implement it? Can someone answer us that?
I think for efficiency and effectiveness, it is really coming from the protocol design, and then also coming to feasibility and site selection. I think these are, really giving good ways. Of course, again, how it is really going to be designed, and then not directing to something with the biases or other information. But I think it should start from beginning, and then, moving forward with the collecting or getting the outcomes afterwards. This is what I would think of.
Thanks a lot. Our next question is, we hear that now AI providing input and at PhD level response. And when we have general intelligence, this means that PhD level response will be provided in all domains, which will definitely surpass human expertise in a domain. Do you see any impact here?
I go back to what we've already mentioned. So think about this as a pairing with a human and not as AI as an independent actor. And so I think if you have a PhD level intelligent assistant next to you, then that means that you get smarter yourself, and you can perhaps ask better questions and learn faster. So I think really that's the way to think about it in terms of how the power of AI can be harnessed in all environments.
Thanks a lot. Is there anybody else who wants to say something to this question, please? And if not, I still have another one.
Well, I'll answer this one also.
All right.
So
Thank you.
every technology, someone says, "Oh my God, everyone's going to end up out of work." Yes, copywriters and editors have been impacted by this most directly. The people, because that's really the question is, are we going to lose PhD level people? Yes, college educated people are more impacted by this kind of work than anyone else. Having said that, people who learn to use these tools will be superhuman and will be able to do more work. And we've never actually cut down the amount of work that has to be done. We've been talking about technology making it so no one has to work very much. That still hasn't happened. It's not going to happen. We just come up with more and more work to do. And the people who learn to use the newest tools are the ones who are employed at the best jobs. So it's an opportunity for learning, not oh my God, my job's going to go away.
Thank you very much, Nechama. And I have a last question here. That is, pharma companies face a dilemma balancing the risk of data security, potential information loss, with the need to adopt advancing AI technologies promptly. How can they navigate this challenge effectively? And let me know, please, if you want me to repeat it.
I can go for that answer. Usually, those questions of the data security, of the also the governance, it's not a technological question. It's about people that operate with each other, set up where the governance model is driven by someone who is really taking care of the data, of the security rules, and the technology is there only a support. It's like with the AI, and this is why many initiatives and they fail, because organizations, they don't see the investment in security officers, in stewards, in owners that are really doing that 8 hours per day and really taking care of the data as custodian stewards from security, from data governance, from AI governance perspective. I think this is something that we need to be conscious about, that the technology people and people knowing the rules around the data, this is part of the data village, so to say.
All right. Big thank you to everybody, also to our audience for the questions. And I would like to hand over now to my colleague Linda, please.
Yes, also a big
Thank
you from my side to all the speakers, to all the contributors. I really like the expression that AI is giving human superpowers, so I'll keep that in mind. And I think we've still got lots of human traits that AI will not be able to outsmart so far. EQ, SQ, AQ, all the quotients that we have as humans that AI doesn't have yet. So I'm not so afraid, and I'm very much looking forward to next steps in AI evolution, and I'm a fan of AI usage myself. Tomorrow we will look more to the regulatory side of it, and also Dr. Lamberti from the Tufts University, she will reveal the first survey results that are revealing data around the uptake of AI in clinical research. So I invite you all tomorrow again for 2.5 hours session on superpowers by AI. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow for more insights and discussions on responsible AI in clinical trials. Thank you.
Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you very much.